We will get started. Good morning and welcome to our MRTA conversation today. This is our educational webinar series. For those of you that are joining us, thank you very much. My name is John Green. I'm joined by your president and co-host, Nancy Craig, on the call today. We're going to talk about a wide variety of quick topics that are going on with MRTA, and then we're going to jump into a long-term care conversation. And before we do that, just want to do a couple of quick housekeeping details here, as we've got some folks that are logging on as well. If you've joined us for the first time or you joined us for the 10th time, we appreciate you being here. All participants are in a listen-only mode. And what that means is that you're not on the screen. It's not like a regular Zoom webinar that you may do through the church or with your grandkids or something like that. It means that you won't be on screen. But if you want to have a question or you want to have a chat conversation, you can drop it in the chat or in the Q&A feature. And we'll pause periodically and check that and make sure that we answer all those questions for you and get that taken care of for you. At the end of the conversation, we're going to stop the recording and allow you to raise your hand, because some people don't feel comfortable chatting, but they feel comfortable with raising their hand, and we can unmute you and you can ask your question at that point. We do record every one of these webinars. We put them out on the MRTA website so that you can go back and you can look and see where the webinars were in the past, listen to them, share them with a son or a daughter or with a parent, something like that. You're also going to see this QR code at the very end of our conversation today. If there is something that we talked about that you want to get more information, more in-depth information on from one of our representatives in Missouri, all you have to do is take your smartphone, hover over that QR code with your camera feature. So take your phone, open up your camera, hover over that QR code, a little form will pop up. You can select some of the topics we've talked about today, and someone will get back to you right away to do that. So let's go ahead and jump in here. I know that we've got some folks that need to get out to take care of some things before the snow blows in across the state. But Nancy, I know you just wrapped up a pretty big President's Summit. So why don't you kind of update the group on what took place and then talk about this new phone to action piece as well.
Oh, good. I'm glad you've got these photos or pictures too. Maria Walden is your new executive director. She comes to us from Public School Retirement Systems, and that's where our money comes from. So she knows a lot about that system and how to protect it and the legislation that might affect it. So that's me in the pink. I was bouncing up and down a lot over the 3 days that we were there. So it was great fun. It was great fun. I am me, and they knew me by the end of the week, or the end of the 3 days. The middle is the amount of money that retired educators put into the state of Missouri for their volunteer hours. If you volunteer for anything, it goes into a pool, and it is multiplied by $28, and I forget, I think it's on the bottom of the check. But anyway, that money that saves Missouri's government a lot of money. So the third picture is a phone to action. And if you'll look at it, it says text MRTA to 52886. It's very, very easy to sign up. Whenever our legislators do something stupid and want to, which affects Missouri schools or Missouri's retirees, we send this out. It will appear on your phone as 52886. And when you see those numbers, you hit those numbers, it comes up and it says, and it asks for your name, address, and your email address. So you have to be registered, and there is a message. You can either create your own message, and that message, or the message that's on your phone at that time, which is usually very concise and very clear. It's usually about a bill that will affect the public schools in the state of Missouri adversely, or it's usually a bill that will affect our retirees adversely. So it's very important. We have over 5,000 people, members of MRTA, that have signed up for this. And if you're not one of them, you should be on that. it'll pop up. You'll put in your information, and this goes directly to your senator and your representative in the state House of Representatives, or House in Jeff City. So it's really, really important. I can't stress that enough to you. So if you're not part of that 5,000, you need to be on that part of that 5,000. So I'm really excited about your long-term care that John's going to present, and I really appreciate John. He does a great job. Of course, I'm eating. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to jump off, John, and I have to go to the store. So.
All right, go get that last loaf of bread before somebody else does, and stay safe out there in the weather.
Yeah, thank you. It's not. Yeah, we're having a yogurt crisis here. I only have one yogurt left, so I've got to go get my yogurt.
All right, we'll go get it, Nancy. Thank you. I enjoyed the report from the President's Conference that you had this past week in Columbia. And again, that call to action is really pretty neat. I would encourage you, sign up for that via text. Text MRTA to 52886. And what that does is you'll get that, like as Nancy mentioned, a little response form back. You put your specific information in there. And then whenever there is a bill that MRTA wants you to call to action on, you'll get a text on that. And it will give you some verbiage that tells you how to communicate. And it will you can send that then to your senator or to your representative. So that's really a great system. It's very vitally important that we stay on top of these things in this legislative time period, especially with the way the stock market's gyrating now. There could be some calls to do something to the pension plan. It could affect COLAs in the future, could affect current teachers now when they retire, things like that. MRTA is not going to spam you and hit your phone up with all kind of different text. It's only when there's a specific action that needs to be taken care of out there. So again, thank you, Nancy, for that. Just a quick reminder, my name is John Green with Association Member Benefits Advisors. I live a little bit north of Houston with my wife, who is a second grade teacher. My kids are all grown. I had my middle son who just graduated from Mizzou last summer and got married. My daughter is in Kansas City this morning. She just sent me a video of the snow coming down. She's there for the Big 12 basketball tournament, and she's all excited about that. So we've got a lot of ties in Missouri right now and appreciate the opportunity to share with you. Most of my career I have spent in the classroom sharing with educators what their retirement years are going to look like. And so we want to talk about some of that today. But before we do that, I just want to do a quick reminder of how MRTA works on your behalf. First and foremost, they're there as a pension watchdog for you. You worked so many years in the school, and whenever you're ready to retire, the fact that your pension is there when you need it, that is so important. MRT is there to protect that. They're there to protect those benefits that you deserve, the benefits that you earned, and how you access those as well. They're also there to connect you back to your local retiree community. In times of COVID, we kind of lost that ability to get together. We're now starting to see the opportunity to meet back up. I know that Nancy travels all over the state, starting to see local units meet again, which is great. And then they partner with AMBA to make sure that you've got the best access to exclusive benefits, discounts, and all kind of fun stuff that help not only fill in your gaps in your retirement years, but also help your pension dollar stretch a little bit further. And everybody could use that, especially during this time of inflation. So the advantages of having MRTA and AMBA together, it helps fill those gaps from your district or from the state that you don't have covered right now. There's certain things that you don't have covered when you left the schoolhouse. They're portable for whatever reason you leave the state. We've got several on this call that are from out of state. So you can take these benefits anywhere. It does not matter if you live in Missouri or not. But some of the biggest reasons that MRTA members tell us they appreciate having AMBA and MRTA together is the fact that they can extend their benefits from AMBA or MRTA to their parents or to family members who aren't eligible for their benefits. And because many teachers retire maybe in their early 50s, they may start taking on a different career even after they leave the schoolhouse. It may prevent you from having to take off additional time from your current career to take care of a loved one because of their needs as well. So we're going to talk about this whole concept of home health care, long-term care, what all it all means, all that type of thing, so that you understand what could be out there, what gaps could be out there. We want to kind of cover the myths surrounding care and what's out there. We're going to discuss the need for long-term care and discuss the traditional components of long-term care. Many on this call today have a long-term care policy and just want to kind of give you an educational background of what makes it up, because it's important to understand that and help you make the most of your endorsed options. We have a great group on the call today. I want to kind of get a feel for who's on our call. We're going to launch a poll out there, totally anonymous. If you'll just put in there, I have made some sort of long-term care preparation. Yes or no, or you're not sure, because some people think they've got it through the school. They may think they have it through Medicare, that kind of thing. So drop that in there. We'll just take about 10, 15 more seconds, and it'll help us kind of direct our conversation today. So we appreciate you jumping in and joining us today. I know it's going to be a cold one as it sweeps across the state of Missouri. So thank you for joining us. I'm glad we have Zoom, that we can do stuff like this and not be too worried about getting out there and getting in the weather just to come visit an in-person seminar. So just a couple more seconds here. I'm going to end this poll. All right. I'm going to share the results here. It's an interesting group here. We've got about 70% of you that don't have a plan. A good third of you have some sort of a plan. So I applaud you for that. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to kind of walk through some of these different things and get out there and just help you understand this. Feel free to drop your questions into chat. And again, at the end, after we stopped recording, we can answer some of those live as well. So talk about long-term care. I want you to think of it not necessarily in terms of just yourself. I want you to think of it in terms of impacting generations. So whether you've got parents that are still living or whether you're the oldest in your family, taking care of family members, be it yourself, your parents, or others, can impact generations beyond just you. We've seen this. I've seen it in my own personal life, and I'll share my story with you as we go through here. We've seen it impact families, grandkids and kids, things like that, brothers and sisters. So protecting your future through long-term care coverage or taking care of that long-term care issue can be vitally important. And here's why I have this conversation. This is very personal to me. This is a photograph of me and my father back in July of 2020. Now, it's hard to believe it's been that long. This is myself and my dad at his long-term care facility in Austin. This was the last time that he remembered who I was. It was in July of 2020. He passed away in October of 2020. Complications related to dementia, spent the last 2 years of his life in 2 different nursing facilities. And we were blessed because he had the foresight back in his early 60s to take out a long-term care policy. And so I kind of want to weave this conversation today to talk about how it impacted our family, what the components of his plan was, traditional components of long-term care, and show you what would have happened if he would have waited just 1 more year to get long-term care insurance and how that would have impacted us going forward as well. So because we've got teachers on this call, I want to give you a pop quiz. I love getting pop quizzes from you back when I was in school, but I want you to grab a pen and paper and just number 1 to 6 real quickly and answer true or false to these questions here. Long-term disability and long-term care are the same thing, true or false? Very few people need extended long-term care in their lifetimes, true or false? Only people over 50 need long-term care. Nursing home confinement is the only long-term care option. True or false? Medicare pays for everything. And I should just wait until I'm retired or wait till I'm long past my retirement years. So true or false to any of those, feel free to answer those. If you answered anything other than false, that's incorrect. Every one of these is false. So we're going to walk through there and kind of show you some of these things and show you each different step along the way, how long-term care is built and how it works. But the bottom line is Health and Human Services did a study back a few years ago that 70% of us over the age of 65 are going to need extended care at some period in their life. Now, when I say extended care, it may be like my father's situation where he needed it for the last 2 years of his life, extended care. It may be for some of you that have a knee replacement surgery and only need extended care for 4 months, or a slip and fall as a result of snow today and may have to stay into some type of recovery facility or have someone come to your house for just a few months. So extended care may not always mean end of life care. It can mean for a short period of time due to an accident, due to a knee replacement surgery or something like that, or a heart attack that causes you to need to have someone take care of you. So extended care is going to impact all of us at some point in our lifetime. And this is just kind of a look at the historical trend of long-term care. Nancy and I were talking before the webinar started, and many of you may have purchased through the school, may have purchased through your spouse's place of employment or individually, a policy back in the 90s through the early 2000s. That was a time of very high number of long-term care policies because many people, your generation, my generation, saw their parents or grandparents have a long-term care need, and when it was offered through the school or offered somewhere through an association, they purchased it because they needed it. So the sales were up pretty high through early 2000s. Then all of a sudden, more people started living longer. The increase of dementia and Alzheimer's started going up, and insurance claims started going up, up, and up. Well, companies responded by raising their rates, by tightening up underwriting. And so we saw a significant decline in the use of long-term care and in the purchase of long-term care, but it didn't change the fact that more and more people needed it. So you may find yourself there at this point now, like Nancy was, where she got a letter from her company that provides long-term care that says, we're going to raise your rates, we're going to cut the costs, we can do a bunch of different things, but you need to make a decision. We're going to talk about that in our 201 session, but I kind of want to give you just kind of a look at where we are today. And I want to talk about long-term care. So about 29% of you already have some sort of a long-term care plan. A few of you weren't quite sure whether you did or not. But I want to look at long-term care to a traditional policy. Okay, there's many different plans out there today, but a traditional long-term care policy that you may have scuttled away somewhere in a drawer, or your parents have at their house, something like that, in terms of a hamburger. A long-term care policy has qualifications. So think about the buns as the qualification. You have to lose usually 2 or 3 of your activities of daily living: bathing, toileting, being able to wipe your backside, feeding, continence, transferring, meaning getting out of bed into a chair, getting out of a chair into a wheelchair, something like that. Once you lose 2 of those activities of daily living, usually then you're eligible to receive long-term care. There's also another component called a cognitive impairment. And this was the case with my father. He hadn't lost any of his activities of daily living, but he had dementia. He had vascular dementia. So think dementia, think Alzheimer's, things like that. That's what qualified and triggered his long-term care policy. Now, eventually he lost all of his activities of daily living. He wasn't able to provide for himself in any way, shape, or form. But because that cognitive impairment was there, that's what triggered his long-term care. So you've got your buns. You have to lose either the activities of daily living, and most policies are 2 to 3 activities of daily living, or have a cognitive impairment. Once those components or one of those qualifications or one of those buns, so to speak, of your hamburger, your long-term care policy, then you receive your benefit amount. Now, many policies had a daily benefit amount where you could select between $100 and $300 a day of benefit that would be delivered to you once you went on claim. Some policies had a pool of money, and that pool of money would say you've got $200,000 or $300,000 or whatever amount it is for your long-term care to use how you need it to be. Okay, so that's the meat. That's really the basis of what you wanted your coverage for. Then you had a length of coverage provision. Some people would buy a 3-year, a 5-year, or a lifetime coverage, which meant that no matter what your costs were or what your daily benefit was, it would stop after year 3, after year 5, or it would go for the rest of your life. Sometimes that pool of money determined both. It says as long as your pool of money was intact, you could still pull from it. Once you ran out of money, your coverage stopped at that point. Then you had an elimination period. And an elimination period is a way that individuals and companies use to cut the cost or keep the cost of the long-term care insurance lower. Think of elimination period as a deductible. Now, many of you live in Missouri. You live in the tornado belt as tornadoes roll through there, or hail, something like that. So think of elimination period as a deductible on your homeowner's policy. A hailstorm rolls through, you've got to cover the first $1,000. You've got to cover the first 1% of your house repairs, and then they'll pick up the coverage after that. The elimination period in a long-term care policy says you have to be responsible for the first 90 days or the first 180 days of benefit before the policy will pay. And what that means is you're out of pocket before the policy kicks in. Some people have 90 days, some people have 180 days. I've seen a few policies with a 1-year elimination period. So that's a component that's in there. A lot of times you picked a 90-day plus to keep the cost low of your premiums. Then there's location of coverage. A traditional long-term care policy would determine in there whether you received coverage in a nursing home, in an assisted living facility, or at home as well. So some policies covered all three, some just covered nursing home coverage. Some would say there's a hybrid in there, or they would have less coverage if you were being taken care of at home as opposed to a nursing home facility. So there could be some differences in there. Location of coverage is often determined in your policy as well. Then you had a couple of riders that would come on top of there that you could put on there. One is an inflation protection rider, and it usually was a little additional cost, and you could put a 5% compound interest or a 5% simple interest on that daily benefit amount, so that after you took out a policy 15 years ago, that $100 a day benefit could now be worth $235 a day in today's dollars. So that inflation protection was something that's out there. Some companies would offer a plan that said, we will offer you the ability to buy up your coverage every 2 or 3 years. And if you take it, that's great. If you don't take it and you pass on 2 times, you'll never get a chance to get that coverage again. So inflation protection can be kind of confusing. There is a cost that's built into that. So some people deferred it because they didn't want to pay for the cost, but it's important you have somebody review that. And then some policies, not a lot of them, but some policies had a non-skilled services provision in there, which meant that if you didn't have the ability to feed yourself or to cook for yourself or to clean, or you needed someone to sit up with you in your house, that type of thing, a non-skilled person could come out. And let me kind of explain how that worked for my dad for a while. In his early stages of dementia, my stepmother was still working, and so she needed to get her sleep at night. Well, my dad would be a wander off risk, meaning he'd get up in the middle of the night, could wander out in the front yard, get to working in the garage, do all kind of strange stuff. So a non-skilled person, meaning that somebody that wasn't a skilled nurse, could come over and just sit up at night while my stepmother slept, so that my dad wouldn't be a risk to himself to wander off. Some policies have provisions in there that provide for non-skilled services like that. Some don't. So it's important to understand what your components are. So that's a look at the traditional components of a long-term care policy. Many things have changed now, but for those of you who had a policy in the past, you probably have many of these provisions in your policy. So when we define extended care or long-term care, we just talk long-term care, that's an umbrella term for extended care. It could mean care in your home. It could be care in a nursing home or a long-term care facility like my father spent his last 2 years in. Or it could be what I call care in a continuing care facility or community. There are assisted living communities that are popping up all over. Some of them are private companies that have gotten into the business of taking care of an assisted living community. Some are church related. Some are through fraternal organizations like Masonic lodges, Shriners, things like that. But these are communities where you come in and you purchase your unit and you're living in there. You're taking advantage of all the community activities, the fun stuff. There's a dining facility, all that kind of thing. And as your health declines and you need more care, they have the ability to provide some sort of nursing care on property. And so it's a neat way that's out there that some people, especially couples that want to live together, but one needs more care. And so it allows you to have that comfort knowing that you are going to stay and age in place, for lack of a better term, in this one place, and there's going to be care for you throughout there. So that's kind of what we talk about when we talk about extended care, those different areas that you can have that taken care of. And when we think about extended care, it oftentimes boils down to cost determines our choices. Most people will pull from their personal savings or their assets. Sometimes they'll ask for assistance from family and friends. And I'm not talking about a GoFundMe. I'm talking about having a son or a daughter take off, or a daughter-in-law take off from their career to provide care for you or for a parent. or move in with a son or a daughter, something like that. Very few people move into the Medicaid program. We're going to talk briefly about that. Or they will leverage and use extended care coverage. Unfortunately, that's what my father was able to do. He was able to use his long-term care policy to take care of him at home. And then when my stepmother could no longer do that, move him to a couple of different facilities to take care of him the last 2 years of his life. And so an extended care coverage allowed for that financial burden to be removed from my stepmother, be removed from my brother and I, and take care of that expense as he moved through his care needs. Because we never know who's going to need it in the future. As we age, things that used to be easy for us to do, they're harder to do for ourselves. You know that as we age that way. With my father, he had a series of strokes leading more to his vascular dementia that made it much more difficult for him to do things, much more difficult for my stepmother to take care of him. So we had to move him into a facility that would take care of him there. I noticed while he was there, and he was in a nice facility. It wasn't a Taj Mahal by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a nice facility. I really liked the people that he worked with, and I'd go out and visit him. It's outside of Austin in a little community called Marble Falls. I'd go visit him, and I noticed that there were people younger than me, and I was about 52 whenever my father went into a nursing home for the first time, that were younger than me there. So I get to ask the attendants there, the nurses, things like that. And I said, what's the situation? They said, people under 50 having strokes or auto accidents with a traumatic brain injury from a fall or an auto accident, something like that. So these things can happen to us at a younger age too. So you never know when you're going to need this. And having that some type of proper preparation for your care is important, because even younger people need those long-term care services as well. And when I talk to people all over the country, there's some common misconceptions out there. First of all, they think, well, my health care insurance is going to cover me, or that Medicare is going to cover my long-term care costs. Private health insurance, whether it's through the school district, through your spouse, however you have that, does not cover long-term care by any stretch of the imagination, and has very limited rehabilitation coverage. Medicare in the past may have covered long-term care, but does not cover it at all now beyond a certain time period for a very specific acute need for recovery. Once you get past that recovery stage, and when I say this, my father had a situation when he had his stroke. He had to go to a recovery care facility where he would get back on his feet, learn to feed himself, stuff like that. Once that happened and when he was able to do that, long-term care through Medicare stopped. And I'll kind of show you some dates as well. There's some time frames and how that works. Medicare, some people think, is the same as Medicaid, two totally different programs for two totally different purposes. And one does cover, one doesn't cover. We'll talk about that in a moment. Or some people think I'm just too young to buy. And as I mentioned to you, we don't know what the future holds. And I'll show you what the impact of waiting can have on you as well. All right. We talked a little bit about what is extended care. Extended care can be provided in a wide variety of places, but most people want to be in their home when their care is provided to them. It was put to me many years ago that why would you want to work all your life and have somebody else determine where you spend your final years? We want to stay at home. We want to stay near a spouse. We want to stay near something that's familiar to us in our community, our churches, our family, our friends. And so the proper preparedness level can keep you at home, keeps you connected to your community. If you have to go to an assisted living facility or to a nursing home, you can do so. But the goal really is to prevent going to those places, to be able to take care of you in the home. So a good, proper plan can help keep you connected to those things that matter most to you as you're spending your years. Now, I want to show you some numbers out here, and I'm going to hit it a little bit harder when we talk about in the 201 session on the 24th. But the cost of care nationally, Mutual of Omaha, who is the preferred provider for the MRTA's long-term care plan, did a survey of the national numbers a few years ago, and it's about $25 an hour for a home health aide to come out to your home nationally. Goes up to an assisted living facility, about an average of $5,900 a month in a single occupancy, one bedroom assisted living facility. And that's not someone that a nurse comes to you all the time. It's somebody that comes, checks on you, does a few things like that. Once you move into the nursing home arena, you're looking at over $108,000 a year for a nursing home semi-private room. For a private room, it jumps up to $122,000, $123,000 a year. These are national averages. For my father, he was in two different facilities. Both of them, I would say, are on the upper end of quality, but they were by no means the Taj Mahal, no means the best place that was out there. For a semi-private room, it was $6,000 a month for his care. And it got to be very expensive, but thankfully we had long-term care. Now I want you to write down this website. You see the website at the bottom, Genworth, GENWORTH.com, genworth.com. Write that down because you can go out to their website. You can plug in the cost of care section, your zip code. You can plug in your city, your state, wherever you're living, and it will show you what you have available to you in your area in terms of cost. So I kind of went west to east across here, a little bit more rural for Jeff City compared to the major urban areas on the east and west of Missouri. You can see there for a home health aide, it ranges from $4,000 a month to $4,500 a month in Kansas City. The assisted living facility is less expensive in Jeff City, of course, more expensive in Kansas City. Nursing home for a semi-private room, it starts to approach that cost that my father experienced out there. For a private room, even more so. So you can plug in and see that. What this doesn't show, and I'll show this in our 201 session on the 24th, is the impact in the last year of inflation, especially if you live in a more rural area and maybe you were looking for a home health aide or a nurse to come out. The cost of gas, the mileage charges, those costs are going up significantly. They're outpacing inflation, unfortunately. So the cost of care is starting to go up in response to inflation, in response to COVID, things like that. So we'll talk about it more in depth here in a couple of weeks, but I just wanted you to take a look at this. I want you to be able to see what's out there. Go out to genworth.com. We'll be glad to take care of you as well. If you have a question right now, since I don't have a co-host with me, if you wouldn't mind putting it into chat, I'd be glad to address it here in a moment. Or at the end, if you want to, we will stop recording. You can hold up your hand at that time and we can go through and unmute you and you can ask a question. We'll be glad to go back to any of these slides. Now, I mentioned Mutual of Omaha before. And if you all remember Mutual of Omaha, I used to remember growing up watching Marlon Perkins and his buddy Jim be out there somewhere with a bunch of wild animals. This is the same company that always sponsored the Wild Kingdom out there. They are the preferred provider for the MRTA endorsed long-term care plan. And they gave us some stats. And they said last year, the average age of the person who goes on claim, which means they start to use their long-term care policy, is 78. Overwhelmingly, it's women using the long-term care plan over men, mostly because women, I will say this because I watched it with my grandfather. My grandmother wore herself out taking care of him, and then she had to go into a nursing home because she wore herself out and had to go on long-term care claims. So overwhelmingly, women more than men use it. Overwhelmingly, women have the policies and the plans. The top three reasons that Mutual of Omaha says people require care, the long-term care, are dementia, heart disease, so I think a heart attack, something like that, and arthritis. And that really surprised me that arthritis was one of the top three up there. The pain and the ability to move just got so difficult that that's the causes for care. So that's what Mutual of Omaha says of the people that they have that go on claim. This is their stats out there. And so when it boils right down to it, we showed the way that people pay it, whether they pay it out of their own pocket, whether they have somebody else pay for it, or whether they use long-term care. You may have saved up a nest egg. You may have your pension payments coming in. But if you need long-term care, you just can't call the pension board and say, hey, can you advance me a couple of checks? Can you raise my pension amount that I'm getting because I need more money? So when that decision comes, when you have to decide or your family has to decide who needs to have long-term care, go into a facility, have a home health aide come out, something like that, those funds may not be there when you need them. You may have to tap into a 403B or an IRA or something like that and trigger some taxes on that sale that you weren't anticipating. I know a lot of you live in rural parts of the state. You may have some family land that you may have to sell off. And unfortunately, I've seen that. So it triggers maybe a tax or a loss you weren't anticipating in there of your future earnings. And so the timing of it is so crucial. And that first dollar is the most expensive dollar because you usually have to come up out of pocket out of that. Some people say, well, I'll just rely on Medicaid. I will tell you, Medicaid is the last resort that you want to go into. It is for people with limited assets. Most of the time, when I say most, I'm talking 99.9% of the time, teachers on pension do not qualify for Medicaid because their pension keeps them above that poverty threshold. You have to spend your assets down 5 years before you use it because there's a pretty strong look back provision in there. So if you're thinking about, well, let's just put mom on Medicaid, you would have already had to sold the house, do all these other stuff beforehand, long before you could qualify for Medicaid. And then what happens is after the person that's on Medicaid passes away, the state is going to go back and seek reimbursement from their estate to get those benefits paid back. So Medicaid is not a good route to go. And I would highly encourage you to not consider that to be my safety net for long-term care. One of the reasons why I saw this was in the first place my father went had 3 wings. 2 wings were private payer wings. And what that means is people were paying out of their pocket, long-term care, didn't matter. They were in there. The staffing ratio was much higher. The activities they got to do was much higher. There was a 3rd wing, which was Medicare paid, or excuse me, Medicaid payer wing. That Medicaid payer wing didn't have the great staffing ratio, didn't have the activities, things like that. So it was a little bit different experience. I would not want to put my father in a Medicaid wing if that was the only solution here. So let's talk about Medicare and how Medicare pays for long-term care. Medicare is very specific on what they pay and what they don't pay. Medicare will pay for your recovery. When I say recovery, in a skilled nursing facility. So when I say skilled nursing facility, means that they are trying to get you back on your feet and back where you can go home. After you have a 3-day hospital stay, write that number 3 down because I'm going to come back here in just a second and talk about that. A 3-day hospital stay. So if you've had a 3-day hospital stay that Medicare says is a 3-day hospital stay and you need recovery afterwards, accident, surgery, whatever it is, stroke, doesn't matter. If you need skilled care after a 3-day stay in a hospital, Medicare will pay for the first 20 days, 100%. They pay for that 100%. If you still need skilled nursing care after that while you're recovering, you will be responsible for a copay of $185. I think it's actually gone up to $190-something now in 2022. So $190-something that you'll have that you're responsible for a day. And then after that, Medicare will stop paying after 100 days if you still need that skilled care. So if you're still needing skilled recovery after 100 days, you're responsible 100% for that skilled care coverage. Medicare does pay a little bit. They'll pay it all for the first 20 days. They'll then pay all but $190-something for the next 80 days. And then after 100 days, they're done paying. So Medicare pays very little. Now, here's what Medicare has done that's even more, I hate to use the word insidious, but I say it because I think it is. Medicare classifies every procedure done in a hospital that they reimburse for by whether it's an inpatient procedure or an observation status procedure. An inpatient procedure is classified by that class code, and you can stay 3 days or more in the hospital. You then trigger all those skilled nursing benefits up to 100 days. If you have a procedure in the hospital that is classified as an observation status procedure, even if you stay 3 nights in the hospital and you need skilled care, Medicare pays $0 for that skilled care, simply because it is a billing code that they change. And they change and add more of these every year. So for example, you may have had a heart procedure 4 years ago where you spent three days in the hospital, 3 nights in the hospital, were discharged to a skilled care facility to help you get back up on your feet, get you rehabilitated, and get back home. And that was covered by Medicare for that time period. If you go back in the hospital now for the same procedure, they may have reclassified that as an observation procedure. You could still spend 3 nights in the hospital, still need 15, 20 days of recovery afterwards. Medicare pays 0 because it's now an observation status procedure. That's how Medicare makes cuts without actually changing reimbursement rates to the hospitals. And the hospitals do this very closely because they lose Medicare funding if they don't properly code the procedures. So that's why I highly encourage you not to rely on Medicare for any type of skilled nursing care, because what they may have covered in the past, they may not cover in the future, because they add thousands of procedures every year to that outpatient surgery, that outpatient observation status out there, and it can get quite confusing. So your option could be, let's look at some kind of long-term care plan. It supplements any out-of-pocket expenses. It protects your assets. Maybe you plan on passing along the house or the family land to your kids, that type of thing. More importantly, it helps keep you connected to what matters most. You can stay at home with the proper planning. You can have someone take care of you. Your son or daughter-in-law doesn't have to quit their job to take care of you with the proper planning, and you can stay in that comfortable surrounding place that you want there. We talked about stay-at-home benefits. This is vital. A proper long-term care policy can keep you at home because they can pay for someone to come do those household tasks like cleaning and meal prep, help you with bathing and dressing. They can also have a visiting nurse that's skilled come do some of those things, or a home health aide do some of those things for you. A good long-term care plan can also get special equipment to your home. They would rather you stay in your home than have to go to a nursing home facility. And the thing I love about a good long-term care plan is it can help modify your home, retrofit it with a ramp, some pull bars in the shower, in the bathtub, maybe a bed that can elevate, things like that, adjustable bed. If those things can modify your home to keep you at home, widen doorways for wheelchairs, stuff like that, that's the way I'd want to be taken care of, not have to go to some facility. I'd want to be taken care of at home. A good long-term care plan can take care of you and do that. The type of long-term care plan that you design can give you cash right up front, day one, that you can use for whatever reason you want to. You can pay for the long-term care. You can use it to supplement other expenses up to a certain amount per month. Some of the reimbursement plans will simply just say, all right, you're on claim. Here's X number of dollars a day. They can send it right to the facility or right to the care providers. You don't have to mess with it, stuff like that. So there's a lot of different options with the new plans today that can give you a significant comfort and peace of mind and flexibility. You can change how you receive the payments throughout your needs in there as well. But we talk about qualifying. We talk about becoming more difficult as you get older. And you can see these numbers in here. Once you get over 75, it's about a 50-50 qualification, meaning based on our health history, based on our current medication, things like that, you may or may not qualify. It gets harder. My father took out his long-term care policy when he was in his early 60s. He had a light stroke when he was 63 years old on an airplane. Had he taken out that long-term care policy 1 year later, that light stroke would have disqualified him from qualifying for long-term care. So I'm glad he took it when he was younger, when he was healthier and had that. Because of his dementia diagnosis, it became much more difficult for me to qualify for long-term care. So family history also has a great impact on long-term care qualification. In our 201 session, we're going to talk about what happens if you've been declined by long-term care, what other alternatives are out there. We're going to share some of those with you. And there is always the cost of waiting. It's not cheaper as we get older. The longer we wait, the more expensive it can be out there. So I want to make sure that you understand that as well. So there are other options. It doesn't have to be just a traditional long-term care policy. There are shorter policies out there. There are policies which I call, or plans that I call, let's keep mom at home for at least 1 more year type of plan that allows you to go for a shorter period of time and get the affairs in order, maybe make some financial transfers, things like that. So there's some things about length of coverage. Daily benefit amounts can be smaller, can be larger. You can get weekly benefit amounts, a lot more flexibility out there. For those of you, the 29% that have a long-term care policy, take a look at your elimination period. There are some new plans out there that can cover just that small period of time. Because as you saw in the cost, it could be $30,000 out of your pocket before your long-term care kicks in. And so there's some plans that can cover your elimination period, some plans that can cover you at home if your other plan doesn't, non-skilled care, plans that can allow you, if necessary, that would pay you to give to your family member to take care of you, that offset the cost of their loss of their job or something like that. So there's a lot of other options out there that are available to you. It's so important that you understand what your options are. I'm going to stop recording here and open it up.